The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Odor, please, odor! The Reels of Justice, Hell on Reels, is now in possession. Grudge, Maynard Bangs, presiding. Will you please dies for the horrible Grudge Bangs? I hate that guy. Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Justice, Hell on Reels. Today we are hearing the case of The People versus The Mummy, a 2017 horror movie about a powerful ancient Egyptian princess who is resurrected in the present day by an unwitting soldier of fortune who looks a lot like Tom Cruise. For those of you unfamiliar with our spooky court proceedings, we are here to determine if this film is guilty of the sin of being a bad movie. If so, it shall be cast for all eternity into the fiery pits of movie hell, upon which this courthouse just so happens to be built. I hate that guy's name. Mr. Big Ben Haslar, you are representing the prosecution. You may present your opening statement.
Scaretaker, please hit the lights and a little mood music here if our budget will allow for it, for I have a terrifying tale to tell. Universal Studios, studio of dreams, shining beacon of Hollywood, home of the Universal Monsters, Moviedom's original cinematic universe. Genesis of 1999's The Mummy, crown jewel of the Universal Empire. No cinematic universe was needed. But for their greed, Universal challenged the audience's nostalgia by venturing deep into the studio, where they found the blueprint of the old and melded it with the allure of the MCU. The Mummy's charm had been dissected and reworked, writer after writer. It took its innovation and made it a Tom Cruise vehicle, inducing a curse upon it. But the Reels of Justice Task Force had observed Universal's moves and intervened before the cinematic universe could truly take root. The filmmakers were condemned to face critiques, their vision criticized in broad daylight. As for The Mummy, it was to remain encased in its digital vault, buried deep underneath every previous Mummy film in the suggestion algorithm. The Reels of Justice would be ever watchful, for if mishandled, it could emerge, not just as a mere copy, but as a DCEU that feels more like homework than entertainment, that does too much too quickly, and not hours, but days of infinite mediocrity!
All right, great. Very enthusiastic.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Appearing on behalf of the defense is Mr. Mike Natale. Please present your opening statement.
The past cannot remain buried forever. In my lifetime, I have unearthed many films that were infamous for being bad. At last, this film reveals cinema's darkest secret, a secret erased from history and forgotten to time, that movies can be just okay. Friends, next month will mark 101 years since Howard Carter and his excavators discovered the tomb of King Tutankhamun. Now, Egyptologists will tell you that Tut wasn't a particularly noteworthy king, kind of middle of the road. Not particularly bad, not particularly good, just kind of fine. As we all know, King Tut toured the world thanks to Carter's excavation. But Carter was so sloppy in getting the mummy out there to the people, his technique so poor, that it caused irreparable damage to the larger structure that had contained Tut. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm here today to posit that so too was the fate of 2017's Mummy, a film that's not particularly bad, not particularly good, kind of just a C or a C+. But Universal's disastrous and hubristic launch of their dark universe did such damage to this film's reputation that it's now unfairly remembered as a bad movie rather than just a decent enough cable or airplane watch. In much the same way as 2005 archaeologists with new eyes were able to dispute the theory that Tut had been killed due to damage to his skull, I hope today to bring new eyes to this film and show that it deserves not boos, but merely meh.
Boo! No, sorry. I walked right into it. Thank you, Mr. Natale. Mr. Haslar, you may proceed with your first exhibit.
Mamma mia.
I have 4 main exhibits, each as unnerving as the last. Look, yes, like looking into the 4 weird eyes of the mummy. And there are no train scenes to save you this time, Mr. Natale. Let's see how you fare.
There was a plane scene.
Goddamn right there is. That's coming up.
Right from the opening, there's this Dark Universe logo, which is forever a stain onto this as its failure. And then from there, we're shuttled into where the Knights put this ruby onto a non-Egyptian soldier of England during the Crusades, only to transition to current day, where they find the tomb, as if knowing that that gem was placed on one of them was necessary information. And then it makes the critical cinematic universe mistake by not having a story set up that works on its own within its opening, but instead is essentially a teaser for other movies by having Russell Crowe come in to ancient Egypt, to Tom Cruise in Mesopotamia, and this is all in the first 10 minutes. Nothing is lingered on or set up for us to care about.
Mr. Natale, is anything set up or left for us to care about?
I mean, look. The Dark Universe logo at the beginning is my argument as to why this movie got sunk, because it's the hubris of, we're going to create a Dark Universe. Had this movie not come out with all of that pomp and circumstance, if you don't do the photo shoot, if you don't say we're going to build our own giant-ass office building on the Universal lot just for the Dark Universe, if you don't do all of that, and you take this movie just as a movie, it's not nearly
but Russell
as bad.
Crowe is in the movie as Jekyll and Hyde. That is in the movie.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that. I'm getting there. I'm getting to Russell Crowe as Jekyll and Hyde. I'm just talking about the Dark Universe logo, my friend, okay? Listen, Jekyll and Hyde shows up at the start of Van Helsing. That's not the thing that sinks that movie either. All I'm saying is...
objection, though. See, that is self-contained within that movie.
Van Helsing's not on trial, not today.
I would also point out that's flawed because Van Helsing was supposed to be a multimedia shared universe. There was a comic, there was a video game, there was an animated prequel. I owned all of them. So let's not talk about Van Helsing as self-contained, friends. I've got the Dark Horse graphic novel right over here next to me, okay?
Well, we'll return to Russell Crowe in a moment. But I also kind of want to get...
if I just may...
It's my time. Oh, sure.
Well, I didn't finish shooting.
He's still objecting.
I didn't. You asked me to respond. I'm just raising the point that you mentioned, like the ruby going on top of the. We needed to know that because the interesting thing about what this film is doing, I think, one interesting little idea is the idea of the curse of the mummy, and the whole impetus of the mummy is not just about like, evil Egypt magic, but trying to address and draw a parallel between the way that the Crusaders were robbing these Middle Eastern countries and Egyptian countries that they were going into, and the modern day kind of selling for profit black market grave robbers. So I do think it's important to show the gem on top of the Crusader, because that's what allows us to bring the story to London and kind of reckon with both the catacombs beneath London and kind of the awkward aspect of any mummy story, which is how much should we really feel sympathetic to these white people that show up in Egypt and just start fucking with stuff. So I get that.
Mr. Haslar. Next point.
Let's talk about this mummy girl, because she's set up to be sort of kind of a feminist message, but her story is set up in a way where I have no idea where she's coming from. She kills her baby brother, which, okay, I kind of get that motivation because she's, trying to like bring...
That's what you understand?
Well, because like he was going to take her place, right? Like she worked to like become a position of power, and just because this male was born, it gets taken from her. I'm not saying it's a good motivation, but I understand the motivation. But from there, she gets to like killing people to put the god Set into her mortal lover, who is a man. Like, why? You'd think like after everything she accomplished everything she wanted after these original murders. Why is she taking it this weird step further just so they can take over the world and she could be subservient to this sort of man god? And after this disjointed setup, that's pretty much it. She's just like the Sandman in Spider-Man 3. If there was something interesting about her for me to care about in the original drafts, she pretty much just goes straight for possessing people and trying to kill people after. And she has no rules. And we like monsters that have rules in this courthouse. She possesses like 4 people in 4 different ways. She's all powerful, except for when the script says she shouldn't be. I never have a clear idea of what her powers are at any moment. She apparently can break free on her own, which, okay, why didn't she do that earlier? She can summon bugs. Why? Why is she just one soul away from becoming all powerful away and summoning sandstorms? Why is one possessed guy a ghost and the other is unbreakable? And why is he seeing his other friend as a hallucination? There's no connective tissue here for me to understand what I should be scared of.
Mr. Natale, would you like to address this defense of infanticide?
Well, that is the part that is genuinely, I think, compelling about the film in a way is, I think a lot of people kind of, and I don't know if this is part of your argument, Prosecutor, but, a lot of people compared this to the Brendan Fraser mummies or, even the original mummies. But the fact of the matter is, all of those basically boil down to a mummy being like, I loved a woman, then I got deaded, and now I want lady again. And this, I thought, really tried to do something more interesting. I don't believe in any way that they're trying to position Amunet as you said it, a feminist figure. I don't think that at all. I do think they're trying to create a motivation for her. But what I thought was very kind of a bold choice in this movie is that something like the 99 mummy kind of lets their mummy off the hook. Even the Boris Karloff mummy is kind of just like, oh, he was in love with a lady and he did some dark magic. There's something I think admirable about the idea of going, no, our monster is going to be an actual monster. Yes, we're going to give you like a little bit of, well, you can understand that she wanted power, but she kills a baby. They don't shy away from that. They don't shy away from any of the actual evil that this monster did. And quite frankly, in a world where every villain has to be overly sympathetic and every villain has to be possibly redeemable, I think having infanticide be an element of Patel's character is an interesting way to kind of make us turn around and go, oh, this is actually a bad thing. Like this is not a redeemable character, and there's never a point in the movie where you feel like she's going to be a redeemable character, which I think is interesting.
And I'm okay with that as a story point where it stops there. If that's like all of her background and that's what her motivation is, I'm fine with that for a monster. But then she goes one step further with this whole summoning set into her dead lover. I don't know what that was about.
Well, that was part of the whole ritual she was doing. That's just basic, mummy ritual movie rules. I don't know.
Why?
I don't know. Why does anything happen in the 99 mummy? Like at a certain point, we're trying to out logic mummy movies.
Everything happened in the 99 mummy because like he wanted to resurrect his lover who died. There was a reason for him to use dark magic.
And Rachel Weisz was the resurrection of that, and Brendan Fraser was a reincarnated person because of the tattoo.
That's
on his
the second one.
The first one. Well, I'm just saying, like. I suppose one of the things that throws me about this argument in this particular case is it's not as though we're talking about a type of movie monster that has. You mentioned, you like monsters with rules. Well, unfortunately, in this case, like the rules of Mummy don't exist. Not even insofar as like obviously we've been malleable about what a Dracula
so make them,
can do.
You could make them in this movie, but I need to have with any kind of supernatural force. I need to have rules so I know like where the boundaries are.
But
instead of just making crap up every moment.
But
anyway, I'm ready to move on. If you allow, Your Honor.
Yeah. If there's nothing further Mr. Natale would like to respond to, then
wake up, Your Honor.
You can bring up your next thing. I am.
I would like to address this as a Tom Cruise vehicle. He sort of plays like an anti-hero in this, but Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise. He isn't Jack Sparrow-y enough. You can't help but see Tom Cruise in this one. He can do other roles in other films, but he's not doing it in this one. He wants to like show his body, like this is like some of the things that he does in remakes to kind of prove to everyone that he's so cool. We have Annabelle Wallis as his love interest, but she adds nothing to this, just like most Tom Cruise vehicles. She's a complete damsel in distress. She's boring. She's just there to sort of like put some exposition and sprinkle it around every so often. Why make this character host to a god of death at the end? It's because Tom Cruise like didn't want to, be sort of like in the background, I guess, because this was, I think, an original draft, the Mummy story, but now we need to make him a bit more prominent. And I think that's the reason why they did this whole set god killing thing in the beginning, and it kind of killed her story. It's because of Tom Cruise's ego, and he just ends up like kind of riding in the desert, apparently a god now. Is he good? Is he bad? We don't know. We don't care. This isn't a direction that he was like going through the whole time. We don't know if he's a god of death now or if Set is actually possessing him. which I don't know why like set would even bother like that if Tom Cruise is still like in control of his faculties. None of that makes sense.
Mr. Natale, you'd like to respond to these points? Has Tom Cruise work in this movie?
I would counter that the fascinating thing is that Tom Cruise works, to me, as well in this movie as he works in any movie he does afterward. And this is kind of the crux of my confusion with The Mummy, because in 2017 he makes The Mummy and everybody goes, oh my God, his ego destroyed this. He's just playing Tom Cruise. Like, he's just playing the same thing we've always seen. You know, he's not playing a character. And then the very next year, they release Mission Impossible Fallout, where I watch and go, yeah, it's Tom Cruise just playing Tom Cruise. And people went, no, you don't understand. Ethan Hunt is now a deep and profound character. And in fact, this is one of the greatest action movies of all time. And then cut to a couple of years later, and all of a sudden I'm watching Tom Cruise play Tom Cruise again, and people are going, Top Gun Maverick deserves Best Picture at the Academy Awards. So what I'm confused by about all of this, and what has always confused me about The Mummy, is, okay, explain to me why that Variety article comes out, what went wrong with The Mummy? Tom Cruise's obsessive control, forcing them to do practical plane stunts, destroyed this movie. And now, last year, we had to hear, you don't understand. Tom Cruise's passionate drive, demanding that Maverick use real plane stunts, saved cinema. Here's my thing.
Okay.
Here's my thing.
Mr. Haslar. These are things you've said.
I guess my thing that I wonder about with that complaint about Tom Cruise in this movie is when I hear that from people, I'm
complaining about his character.
Yeah,
like,
but
not the plane or anything.
But
like
I'm saying, when was the last time Tom Cruise played a character that wasn't smiling Tom Cruise? Tropic Thunder? Like, what are we doing it? This is what Tom Cruise does in movies. And quite frankly, I think...
and that's the problem. That's the exact problem with this, because it was originally a script, and then Tom Cruise came on, and he's like, no, let's make it all about me.
Yeah, which he does in all his movies, and we seem to like it when it's Mission Impossible or Maverick.
Because, like, from the beginning of a Mission Impossible movie, it's set up to be a Tom Cruise being a spy. Like, it's all about the stunts. That's what it is.
I mean,
The Mummy is horror and less about that.
One would argue that one of them was set up to be Jeremy Renner's movie, and then somebody went, oh, I'm not done with these movies after all. But, that's neither here nor there.
Would you make that argument, Mr. Natale?
I mean, I don't want anybody digging through my trash, so I'm not going to say nothing mean about this guy. Point is, I do think that sincerely, if I may, one thing I do think is one of the things that makes this a fascinating watch to me is the fact that you acknowledge, Prosecutor, in your opening statement that they were trying to make an MCU movie. And the only thing that makes this more compelling to me than the other would-be MCU movies that have come out from other studios is that Tom Cruise is trying so desperately to make this like a classic 80s, 90s Tom Cruise action movie. And this incongruity there to just try and have this character do these bits. He's got a prolonged bit about wanting to make sure people know he's good in bed, stuff like that. That doesn't happen in these other movies. There is this fascinating thing where like Tom Cruise got invited in to do what should be an MCU movie, and he just doesn't understand what that is. And is like, no, I got it. This is Top Gun. I understand what I'm doing. I got it. And to watch it in that way, I think it happens to be pretty interesting. No, Tom Cruise isn't doing a brand new character. And no, another movie may not center it on a Nick Morton type, but also, let's face it, The Mummy isn't the main character of the 1999 Mummy either. And honestly, The Mummy isn't even the main character of the original Universal Mummy, because it ain't the guy in the band in the last 10 minutes.
It does. I don't care that the Mummy's not the main character. I care that he's like sort of like this anti-hero that clashes with the tone of the film. But getting to like the dark universe aspect of this, it does make a lot of those same mistakes that almost everyone tries to make when they try to do a cinematic universe, and that's to do too much too quickly. And those fingerprints are all evident over this. It doesn't set up. It doesn't tease future films. It like forces them upon you, especially with Russell Crowe's very jarring appearance in this thing, where his like foyer is just like a bunch of jars with supernatural body parts and cameos, and oh, you should be excited for this, and like he's like some sort of back room and not like a main entrance if he's like really in charge of this like secret society, and he's like he enters meetings and immediately starts turning into Hyde, and he has to inject himself to hide it because visually, I guess we have to see this where it's normally you think the character would be, do that beforehand or something like that off screen before having to do meetings. And he apparently has inexhaustible resources. Yet this warehouse is beneath the British Museum where he chooses to hang out, like in this dark basement. And it assumes we care about Jekyll and Hyde without even really setting them up in any way. It has cameos like the Book and the Dead from the other Mummy movie. It's very distracting. These kind of narrative disjointedness where it's trying to like connect things to movies that don't exist. And when it's taken on its own, since those movies never happened, it's very confusing.
Mr. Natale?
Your Honor, first I'd like it entered on the record. The name of the organization is Prodigium. I think it's, quite frankly, unfair to not call it by its proper name. Its name is Prodigium. Please no.
I have a prescription for those.
Yeah. Here's my thing. I could argue a lot of points about, each little individual thing you said, but I also think it's worth noting that, you're right. You're right. They create this thing, Prodigium. They have Dr. Jekyll working underneath the British Museum, surrounded by relics, and he keeps turning into Mr. Hyde and kind of, going nuts. And it oscillates between like posh, reserved gentleman and going crazy Cockney accent, gonna beat him up with my big old fist guy. And here's the thing about that. Everything that you're describing in most hands is terrible and is a drain on the movie. And I would, in any other circumstance, agree with you. But all of that creates the most beautiful stage for late stage Russell Crowe to ham it up. For Russell Crowe,
we think it's late stage. We don't know.
For the Russell Crowe, well, I don't want to be pejorative when we describe the other face of Russell Crowe that people call his face, but like the nice guys, Pope's Exorcist era Russell Crowe, where he's just like
poker face.
All of this. He's just going for it, and I guess that's kind of the thing. Is I am of Could I talk about and expound upon the fact that, I don't know, Prodigium, as a kid who liked monster movies, it's as cool to me as the idea of, like, did you know Van Helsing met all the monsters and had spinny blades and hung out in the church? I get that that's not everyone's bag. I totally do. And if this was some role where you cast an overly serious actor, or even young Russell Crowe, who's still trying to be a serious actor, then I would say to you, yes, this scene drags. But it is all the most incredible platform for Russell Crowe to go ham. On the bonus features of the DVD, they talk about how the entire Prodigium set was built practically. They even rigged it up so that the walls would actually leak water. And Russell Crowe talks about how much he loved that because as an actor, he's got so much real scenery to chew on, and motherfuckers does he. And I would counter that...
I'm literally chewing some of that scenery, that's true.
This is the point. I would counter that, quite frankly, if that's what it gives me, I'm okay with that. Let it happen. That's a blast.
But, like, Jekyll and Hyde is not on the same level as, like, introducing, like, ooh, this Marvel character is going to be in the sequel, Like, this character needs to be set up
I would,
for us to relate to them.
I would counter that, quite frankly, more of the general public knows who Jekyll and Hyde is than Nick Fury. Before the first, like at the end of the first Iron Man, Sam Jackson shows up with an eye patch.
Okay, but that's a teaser at the end. Okay. And that makes sense, right? A teaser at the end, rather than like Nick Fury just like showing up for no reason in the middle of the first Iron Man. You'd be confused as hell.
You mean like if Black Widow showed up in the middle of the second Iron Man and nobody?
Yeah, exactly. Also a bad
movie. or if Jeremy Renner just had a bow and arrow in the middle of Hawkeye for no reason.
Also a bad example.
Or in the court, these movies have been on trial, so we have no idea whether they are good or not.
All I'm saying is if you evoke the MCU and go, well, no, Jekyll and Hyde is one of the most universally known characters for the most part. When I was watching it with my partner the other night, who, by the way, thinks this movie is okay. When we were watching it, she was just like, as soon as, Russell Crowe says Henry Jekyll, she's like, got it. Yeah, no, I know what that is. Yeah, because everybody knows who Jekyll and Hyde is, so I don't think you need to...
Is he, like, a head of a secret organization? Like, that's never set up in the previous Jekyll and Hyde
film. The minute he shows up and he goes, I'm the head of Prodigium. My name is Henry Jekyll. That's enough for anybody in the audience to go, got it, locked it, I get what your bit is, I know what's going to happen. You don't necessarily need to have anything else,
Mr. Haslar?
I'm going to lastly go into some of the writing, just like some things that felt disjointed to me. They load this sarcophagus in and they're just like letting it dangle from the helicopter. That's just one element that's just distracting as hell for me instead of just loading it into the plane like a normal person. He hallucinates rats and mummies after going into an alley, but then suddenly snaps in front of Westminster Abbey. And I'm guessing this is just to get like some sort of imagery into the trailer, but narratively, it's just like a quick shortcut to like move them to entirely different locations. They continue to do the snapping around as if they didn't take the time to connect the dots in any true narrative fashion. They have this dagger hidden in a reliquary that the mummy senses somehow, and she like smashes it open and grabs it, but it doesn't have the stone on it. She tries to stab him, but the stone's not there. So like she could sense the knife, but not the stone. That doesn't really make sense to me on how she would know that. But then the stone's reunited with the knife, like literally a scene later. So none of this is even really necessary, except I think it's because they forced this whole set plot in last minute. They open Knight's coffins with the jewel like right in front of her, like the one person they don't want knowing where it is. We have to like, oh, she sees them doing this in Prodigium or whatever. There's little reason to have the knife and the jewel separated at any point. It could have been connected this whole time from a narrative fashion. That would have, saved some of your steps there. And then again, at the end, he becomes set, but not really. There's a lot of questions there. I don't know what the ending is about. Is he himself? Why did he stab himself with the knife? Did he know that he was going to become invincible but not become set? It's a pseudo plot twist, and it is not deserving of anyone's attention. And on that, the prosecution will rest.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Natale. You may proceed with your first exhibit, and of course you can respond to any of those points if you want.
Sure. I mean, I will just point out before I present my case that I didn't really think about it until the ending of this film was mentioned. This is the third time I have defended a movie that ends with the main character and his buddy riding off into the sunset. Weird.
It's not a coincidence.
Weird how that has lined up 3 times. Was never the plan.
You have a type.
Was never the plan. Sorry to go off track there for a second, but I think it's pretty clear what he's doing at the ending, because we do hear Jekyll's voice again saying like, you have to end the cycle. So he's stabbing himself with the idea of Jekyll telling him like, listen, you got to die to end this cycle. So Nick, I assume, is under the idea of like, hey, listen, either I'm immortal and I can control his power, or I'm dead and it ends the cycle. But either way, there's a resolution here.
I become this god. This god possesses me, and this god just destroys the world. Yeah, that's a great ending. Good choice. He lucked out there.
Hey, whatever. He's just mummy magic. Anyway, point is, now I just my main argument is the fact that, again, this movie is kind of dumb.
I love the fact that mummy magic was used as a defense for the jury to consider when they're chewing on it.
So noted.
I came very close to responding to all your arguments with just fucking mummy stones. Mummy stones.
An Egyptian wizard did
it.
it.
I was lazy. I didn't take the time to write a good script. Whatever. Mummy magic.
Here's my thing. Here's my key argument. You are coming in and saying a lot of things like, this movie doesn't make sense. The script is this movie's dumb as shit in a lot of points. I'm not going to sit here and argue that this is going to win an Oscar. It's absolutely not. This movie is silly and just full of a bunch of cool-looking action set pieces and really cool-looking designs. My argument is just the fact that this movie's just okay. This is a movie that is on par, not with a movie that you're necessarily going to go see in IMAX with your friends again and again and again, like it's Mummy Barbenheimer. It is the kind of movie that feels. It is the kind of movie that feels on par with the kind of movies we all watched on like TNT or TNN. You know, it's on par with like a decent Steven Seagal movie where you're like, listen,
that's a low bar.
Steven Seagal movie.
I've got a bit of a cold. I don't really feel like getting up from the couch. I need something that is going to occupy my attention, and it's going to be fine. And this movie is fine. My thing is, this movie, people were prepared to say it was awful before it came out because, number one, the Dark Universe branding was already clowned on, and then that disastrous release of the trailer without the sound effects in it that everybody was ready to dunk on. But actually, when you sit and watch the film itself, it keeps your attention. Sofia Boutella, I would argue, I think is whatever you think about the rest of the film, giving it her all, and is a great find. Between this and Atomic Blonde, I think she really showed like that she could do these kind of parts, and I think it's a shame that this film kind of didn't do her that well. But I would argue that if nothing else,
I would also like that entered into evidence.
What? I just mean that
the film didn't do her well.
Well, I mean the fact that I don't mean that she was mistreated in the film, or that she was. I mean the fact that this movie did not do much for her career. That was what I meant. The fact that like she
Okay.
she gets cast in this part, and the idea was like, you were good in Kingsman. This is going to be like a star-making role for you. And like Tom Cruise gets out of this unscathed. Russell Crowe gets out of this thing unscathed. But Sophia Patel is like not basically viewed as like, no, you're nothing. You don't really got the goods. But I would argue with that, I mean, that there's enough here in terms of just, if nothing else, visually, some cool ideas, practical set design. It is something to look at. I think if nothing else, the money was invested in making this something to look at, from the design of Amunet to the design of the Prodigium Room. Now, you can tell me I don't like how it fits into the plot, but I think it is cool to see a bunch of practical sets with a real kind of gothic horror vibe. So I would say, if nothing else, first point of order is the visuals are very interesting in this one.
Mr. Haslar?
Sure, but there's a lot of great-looking bad movies out there, like Alice in Wonderland, Speed Racer, Prometheus.
None of these movies have been on trial, Mr. Haslar.
All right, well, let me dig through the recommendations of Justice list on Letterboxd, where you can
I
also
will not
see,
take
all
your
the different
Speed
podcasts.
Racer slander, sir.
Oh boy, see, you're starting new episodes, Ben. In the middle of an episode, stop doing that.
But I mean, again, her means nothing. I kind of harped on that, so I won't go into it any further than that. She looks fine. It's got good design. I do like the real sets, but you have to have a strong narrative to carry you through. Just something looking pretty on its own, not enough to carry it. If you're bored to tears.
Mr. Natale, is there substance to the sizzle of Amunet? Is that her?
Amunet.
Amunet.
I think they write an
My
interesting...
favorite Pokemon.
I think they write it in, as I acknowledged during the prosecution's point, I think they make an interesting enough story for her with the infanticide, with all of that they make her at least as interesting a backstory for a movie monster mummy as they do for any other movie mummy, right? And I think that when you're looking at this and you look at the history of the mummy films, right, and you look at the pantheon of mummy films, because the prosecution argued in his opening statement this was the bottom of the recommendations for mummy films, but the fact of the matter is there is no deep mummy backstory in any of these films. The mummy is always, we're going to get a little prologue up top to tell you, like, all right, here's 10 minutes of mostly white people in tan makeup pretending to be in ancient Egypt, right? And we're going to go, well, this is why he was cursed. And then for most of the movie, they're in bandages chasing you around. There is a lot of nostalgia, I would argue, for the 1999 Mummy. And one of the things that I'm surprised I didn't hear in this courtroom, because it is a thing that got heard a lot when the 2017 Mummy came out, was, well, why would you bother to remake it? The 99 Mummy is a classic, right? That one was so good. But it's also worth noting... I don't
do low punches.
But here's the thing. It's also worth noting that when the 99 Mummy came out, the reviews were not great. In fact, currently on Rotten Tomatoes, its critic reviews are only 60%. In a 2.5-star review, the Austin Chronicle said the 99 Mummy was, quote, not one likely to steal Karloff's thunder. Owen Gleiberman at Entertainment Weekly said the 1932 Mummy, Boris Karloff, has a mortician's infernal glower, and the movie showcased the mummy's torment as well as his vengeance. In its hushed-up wax museum way, it was a romance. In the new Mummy, the cursed monster starts out as a glorified video game effect, and then when his flesh is restored, he radiates all the menace of a shaved-headed personal trainer. And the New York Times said, this version of the Mummy has no pretenses to be anything other than a gaudy comic video game splashed onto the screen. So I would just like
Objection, the original Mummy is not on trial here.
Mr. Talley, the problem is, yes, Mr. Talley, there's no precedent set that the 1999 Mummy is good.
No, but I'm simply trying to posit, rather than suggesting that the 99 Mummy is objectively good or anything like that, that all of these movies, that even the movies that we look at before the movies, have the precedent of people going, well, this Mummy doesn't have as much depth as the last Mummy, and they're all misremembering how little depth is actually given to the Mummy. All of them are given, here's 10 minutes of setup, and then otherwise they're going to be in bandages and go, ooh, spooky. At least this one...
Objection, he's responding to arguments that the prosecution didn't throw at him.
Well, you suggested that this Mummy, you were saying this Mummy did not have a lot of depth. They didn't do much with Sophia Boutella's character, and all I'm trying to argue is that in the genre of the Mummy movie, in the genre in which it is working, there is an effort, at least in this part, to add more depth than had been in its predecessors and had been typical of the genre.
Its flaw. Because they added stuff that didn't make sense with that whole set god thing. They didn't bother to fill that in, and they should have. If they would have just stuck with the vague story like they did in the previous Mummies, it would have worked fine.
If I may, I have one more point I want to raise. Well,
please.
I have essentially 1.5 more points to raise, but nevertheless,
1 3/4. We'll let you have it.
the plane sequence. We all love when Tom Cruise does his practical stunts. We go to see the Mission Impossible movies when he does his practical stunts. In this one, this maniac took a plane up to 0 Gs and decided to just float around in a plane for that sequence. It's cool. It's a cool scene. If it was in a Mission Impossible movie, we'd all like it. I just want to point out, it was a cool scene. There's cool sequences in this movie. There's a lot of individual set pieces that are fun to watch, and I stress again, if you have just taken a hit of NyQuil, they play like gangbusters.
A lot of things
NyQuil wasn't issued to me, Mr. Natale, so that wasn't part of the movie-going experience. But going on to this plane thing, my problem with the plane thing, well, it does look cool. To achieve that effect, you have to go above 20,000 feet. So what military plane just sort of chauffeuring a coffin around is going to hit that speed and go up and down to get that 0 G effect? It won't happen.
Well, no, in this case, what's making the movie have the plane have the 0 Gs is, if I may evoke it again, mummy magic.
Is it?
No, but sincerely, like, it's not like the movie is trying to tell you that they are going to. It's the fact that to get the effect of, this plane is, because it's not like the movie is trying to argue that there's a realistic way that a whole horde of birds would crash through the windshield. It was just trying to do like, a bunch of weird mummy shit's happening to this plane. And in order to achieve that effect in real life, rather than just CGI it, they went into the 0 G plane and flew it around because Tom Cruise says he's an aviator. My very last point I want to note, which means will have no effect on the jury's decision, but I just want to note it. They released a bunch of stuff around this movie, including a 2D side-scroller video game a la Contra.
Oh my god, someone was telling me I should research that because the game is awesome.
It's called The Mummy Deconstructed, and it rips. It absolutely rips. It's so much fucking fun. It's so goddamn fun. And quite frankly, I'll take it. Even if we acknowledge the movies, but it gave us that game, which rips. You can get it on the Nintendo store for like $20 on your Switch. It rules.
The prosecution will see to the defense that I want to play that game. I saw the trailer, and while it looks nothing like that movie, except for like some palette swaps, it looks fun.
Great. Well, potentially that video game is not guilty, but again, not on trial. A whole lot of things not on trial discussed today. And would you like to discuss the movie on trial, Mr. Natale?
Oh, I rest my case on the video game.
He did. All right. Well, both sides have rested. The attorneys will now present their closing arguments. Mr. Haslar, you may begin.
Thanks to defending counsel, the curse has been unleashed, members of the jury, and so unfortunately it falls upon you to save the world from the scourge, to save the world from the mediocre cinematic universe of The Mummy 2017. It can no longer be simply buried at the bottom of a streaming catalog. Thanks to Mr. Natale's careless resurrecting of this corpse, it must now be cast into the fiery depths of movie hell as the only possible way to contain it. For when fully resurrected, it will bring along the 12 plagues of cash grabs. For example, Mattel's Barbenverse, the Hasbro universe, Fox's Marvel universe, the Van Helsing Monsterverse, the Amazing Spider-Man Morbin Time universe. And these are just a few of the plagues that will await you if you allow this evil to go across the world. Save the world. Use the sacred guilty incantations forever to seal this monstrosity into movie hell where it belongs. I beseech you.
Morbverse, eh? Thank you. Mr. Natale, please present your closing argument.
I could use this time to summarize my arguments, but instead, Your Honor, I'd like to use my final time to speak to the next generation. For our younger listeners out there, you might be confused after reading glowing reviews of Mission Impossible Fallout calling Cruise the last movie star, how only a year prior he was ridiculed online, called an egotist and too old. That Variety article saying Tom Cruise's obsessive control, forcing them to do all these things, hurts the movie and looks weird in light of this new narrative that Cruise's passionate drive in Maverick and Mission Impossible is what saved cinema. Well, kids, to help clear that up, I took some time and I wrote a little song. I tried to incorporate the ancient modes and modalities. I'd like to play that song for you, and I hope we can all learn something.
I hope it's copyright free.
Tom Cruise. Now, have you ever noticed, since 2018, people online obsessed with everything he's in? Tom Cruise. But when he did The Mummy Cruise, they didn't give it money, but now they love Tom Cruise just because he won't wear super suits. Tom Cruise. They say that Tom Cruise saved us from IP overuse by making MI7 and Top Gun 2. Tom Cruise. Sure, this film's cadaver is dead goose. But you gave awards to Maverick? But I bet they think it's scary if it's said made by Macquarie. Tom Cruise. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't get it, folks. I mean, really, you're trying to tell me that Nick Morton isn't an interesting character, but you also want to pretend that the audience cares that Kitteridge is back in Dead Reckoning Part 1? Nobody knows who Kitteridge is. You're all making this up. This is a fake fandom. We all used to agree that Ethan Hunt wasn't a real character, and now you're trying to pretend that these movies are interesting and have a lot going on for it. I'm sorry, you're going to tell me that you think that The Mummy 2017 is predictable, but you're going to tell me that you were surprised that Henry Cavill turned out to be a bad guy? Henry Cavill! They gave him a mustache! They showed him cocking his fists! What are you trying to tell me, people? What are you trying to do? This is all nonsense. Why is 2017 Tom Cruise bad, but 2018 Tom Cruise is saving cinema? This is ridiculous. You people are out of your minds. You're out of your... Ugh. Sorry, I had to give myself one of those Dr. Jekyll injections. I was starting to break. The defense rests.
Excellent. And I think you should take over Justin Roiland's part in Solar Opposites. I think you'd be very good at that. Thank you both. Members of the jury, Mr. Maynard Bangs, Mr. Dylan J. Schlender, and Mr. There's a good man inside of you fighting to come out, Ryan Luis Rodriguez. You have all heard the spooky facts concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine if this film is guilty of the sin of being a bad movie, and will therefore be condemned to the depths of movie hell. The Scaretaker will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict. Right this way! I wouldn't mind calling that Amanette Mummy. She really had a body to die for, but alas, I think she's too wrapped up in herself.
Caretaker.
He has better puns.
I wonder where the bailiff is. I hope he's safe.
He's dead.
Oh no.
No, I'm kidding. I don't know. I don't know where
good.
I don't know what the Scaretaker did with him.
All right. Fun case today. Probably the best closing argument we've ever heard, and it wasn't
what? Wait a minute, I don't know about that.
It was really
it was very good. But
all right, so how are we feeling about the movie? How are we feeling about the case? Ryan Luis Rodriguez, let's start off with you.
I was made angry about 20 minutes in when they killed Jake Johnson. I'm a big Jake Johnson fan. I was excited to see him co-headlining a movie, and then he shows up like the dead friend in American Werewolf in London, and it made me very upset.
What's he from? I don't know.
New Girl. New Girl. He's also in Jurassic World. He's phenomenal in every single thing that he appears in.
You think he's phenomenal, really?
Yes, I do.
I find him borderline insufferable, but I'll let you.
That's great. That's great, Dylan. But then as the movie proceeds, there's plenty of underlit action to enjoy, and then by the time we get to Dr. Jekyll, immediately my ears perk up when we get to this scene, because again, I like Marvel movies, so having an Easter egg collection is a good way to earn my esteem, especially if you have like the Gillman's hand or some stupid shit like that.
And
but then after that scene, I know, that's what I'm saying. But after that scene, my enthusiasm immediately goes down, and I started just thinking about the screenwriting credits. And I noticed that one of the writers wrote Rachel Getting Married. And I was immediately depressed that this perfect example of the churning studio machine. So this movie made me very angry. It's a gentleman's 3, but I'll cede my pivot and go ahead.
All right. Mr. Banks, how are you feeling about the movie?
Well, I think this is the type of movie I probably would have seen coming when it came out, but I didn't. Not just the bad reviews, but I was turned off by Tom. I'm still turned off by Tom Cruise. He can jump out of all the fucking planes he wants. I don't care. But what I enjoyed is this movie didn't really try to be an action movie. It wasn't trying to be the 90s Mummy, which is what I had expected. It's a little bit closer to the Universal, but it's really just trying to be like a horror movie. It has some action scenes, but it's mostly really trying to be just horror and a monster movie, which I appreciated. So to me, the worst parts of this movie, Tom Cruise is, because I mean, he's like 55 in this, and it's like, I'm not sure you're still in the military, man. I don't think they're putting you out there. Maybe if you have a desk job. And I liked the Mummy character, but I did not hear a lot in defense of her. It was just, yeah, she sucks, but they all suck. And I didn't think she sucked. I think her performance was that great, but I liked them choosing the city god of death instead, because I think it makes her just have a little bit more agency rather than being kind of a sidekick.
She's a very compelling performer. I will give her that.
Yeah. I wish they had made her more human pretty like she is in her flashbacks, rather than the glowing ghost thing.
You didn't like the four eyes thing?
I didn't mind the four eyes things at a point, but like in the other two Mummy movies, eventually she returns to full human form. And if she's trying to allure Tom Cruise into potentially not, killing her and going with her and basically trying to seduce Tom Cruise, well, then she might want to be, human pretty rather than, ghosty and wrapped up and stuff. Like when she comes after him in full grotesque mummy form at the beginning. It's like, this is not going to work, girl. This is not the tactic. Go hit up about a dozen dudes and come looking real good. I bet you can get Tom Cruise to do whatever you want. But anyway, I think, so yeah, my problem is I don't like Tom Cruise. You replace him with someone who could viably be that age in the army, treasure hunting, then I like it a lot more. And the all that Jekyll Dark Universe stuff was too much. That did take me out really fast. But I do like the casting of Russell Crowe. So I'm a little bit on the fence on this one. So I kind of want to leave it up to you guys a bit. I feel like I'm the one who would say something in defense of this film. It wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. The action scenes were good. That's the only good thing about keeping Cruise in this, is that you do get those great, like the great plane crash. So I'm gonna let this one squeak by for me. I'm gonna go not guilty.
Oh, all right. Well, when I'm thinking about the case and the merits that each lawyer brought to the table here, I found myself agreeing with Ben a lot. I think we all agree with the Tom Cruise. Just like, it wasn't a good pick, and I didn't like a lot of the decisions that he made. And then for the defense to try to juxtapose that against Maverick or Mission Impossible.
He's such a bad everyman, isn't he? Like it's like the same thing with War of the Worlds. He wants to be like the everyday guy, but he's still an action hero.
Yeah, actually, I thought he was very good in War of the Worlds, but that's neither here nor there. Same with Maverick or Mission Impossible. Just watching the movie for what it is, Tom Cruise is suffocating, and I agree too. Like the Jekyll and Hyde thing, it's like, where's this coming from? Why is he in charge of the organization? It had a. It felt like it was kind of aping League of Extraordinary Gentlemen too much. It's like we've seen this movie before better, and that's not even that great, but it hasn't been on trial yet, and it seems to be.
It kind of apes the MCU too, right? Because they're going to be crime fighters, right? They're going to fight monsters.
Well, yeah, they're going to travel and fight monsters all over the world. Yeah, it was frankly exhausting whenever Russell Crowe was on the screen, and I love Russell Crowe, and I love Poker Face, and I like this phase of his career. I'm glad he wants to start doing Hackers, but. It just, for me, it didn't work here. And then another great point Ben brought up, what are the powers? What are the limits? Because we don't know, like, is she toying with us? Can she break out of those bonds whenever? It just,
that was silly.
Yeah. It felt like the stakes weren't there. And then when Tom Cruise, is he part set god? Did Set take him over? It's just like, it was a big gamble. It was weird, and frankly, I just didn't care for it. And honestly, I found it to be very boring the whole time. I think Ben articulated a lot of the issues I had with that movie. And while I appreciate Mike's defense and his passion, I just don't think it got it done tonight. So, Ryan, before I lock in, you should lock in case I misword.
It's a gentleman's 3, so
yeah, he said it.
Guilty.
All right, well, I'm going guilty as well. Maynard, it was the pity vote today. Let's get out there.
Not
and
pity,
tell
actually. I walked out of the movie liking it more than I thought.
That's a pity vote. It's okay. Let's go out there and tell that very handsome judge. You still get to be a handsome judge, though.
Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. In the case of The People versus The Mummy, 2017, we find the defendant guilty of being a bad movie.
Oh! The verdict is so rendered. I hereby cast The Mummy 2017 into the fiery pits of movie hell, where it will be forced to reenact the would-be Dark Universe franchise for all eternity. That's right, Sebastian Stan as Dracula, Jeff Goldblum as the Wolfman, and starring as the Bride of Frankenstein, the one, the only, Meryl Streep. Court is adjourned.
This is Mumbly Mumblerson.
Mumbly!
3 days ago I was dead, cycling through the endless void of purgatory. But then I was pulled onto this plane of existence to live again for as long as hell on reels lasts. Upon its end, I shall return to the hoary netherworld for a millennia of torment. You don't want to know what terrible things I've done in my life, for they are numerous and heinous. I'm reporting to you from outside the reels of justice. Big Ben Haslar, would you care to share your thoughts on the jury's verdict? I'm already yawning.
Aw. Well, it's good to see you again, Mumbly, and say hi to the devil for me.
I will. We play Callista.
I would like to remind Tom Cruise that I love a lot of his films. I've recommended almost all the Mission Impossible films, so please don't come after me with your numerous Scientology minions and all the resources at your command. I would also like to tip my hat to Mike Natale. It's always fun to have him in the courthouse and fun to go against him. I loved his closing act at the end. So, yeah, it was a good day. And unfortunately, the scourge of all these cinematic universes will not be unleashed upon the world. Also, again, please forgive me, Tom Cruise.
Bored. And here comes Mike Natale. Excuse me, can we get a word on how you feel about today's verdict? And keep in mind, I've already stopped caring.
I just want to let people know, and I want to make this clear. I think that this film was viewed under the wrong circumstances. It's meant to be viewed on a sick day, or I would counter, it's meant to be viewed when you are in a bit of a fog and very fatigued, less than 24 hours after getting the updated COVID booster and your flu shot at the same time. What I wouldn't recommend doing when you've done both of that is recording an episode of Reels of Justice where you have to defend the mummy and you're in a bit of a daze. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody because you start to forget what you said after you started saying it. Not to suggest that I was impaired in the courtroom when I attended to my client, but I'm just saying, if you get both those shots, don't then have to defend a movie in court. Good night, everybody.
Thank you very much. That's all we have from the courthouse today. I'm going to crawl back into my sarcophagus where I shall sustain my immortal being by dining on scarabs. Let's go back to the studio for post-trial analysis.
Hey, it's great to hear from Mumbly, and it's so nice of him to spend what limited time he has on this earthly plane doing his job.
I know.
Where he loves to be.
Man,
you had 2 shots, and you still nailed that closing argument with perfect comedic timing. That's impressive, sir.
It was excellent.
I'm so tired.
I bet, and we're going to keep you up a little bit longer, though.
The cat only let me sleep 3 hours last night. I'm so tired.
Take that up with the cat. It's not my fault. You got a show to do, Natale. Dance, monkey. Now, what have you been up to lately? What's been keeping you busy besides the shots?
I drove to CVS at noon to get my flu shot, and then I had to drive 3 miles to a Walgreens to get my COVID booster yesterday. So that was my day. No, I mean I've been keeping busy. We just finished recording season 3 of my podcast, You're Missing Out, which is a show where we go through all of the films of the National Film Registry. So by the time this episode comes out, you will be able to go and find all of the 3rd season, all 25 episodes of films we covered. plus a whole bunch of bonus material, our reactions to the National Film Registry selections, our reactions to the Oscars. As you can imagine, I was over the moon when Top Gun Maverick was nominated for Best Picture. I think that was abundantly clear in my conversation. But also, we dropped an episode that was probably our... let me ask this. If you guys had to think, like, what was the dumbest idea you ever had doing this? What was an episode that, if you want to talk about it, that like as you were recording it, you had a moment where you went, oh, I think we bit off too much with this one. Do you have one of those offhand?
Episode 16, Showgirls. It was like 3 hours long with
you know what?
guests.
Good. We had something similar because we thought for our Labor Day bonus episode, we thought, it'd be fun. Let's get a group of friends together and let's go through every single People Magazine Sexiest Man Alive cover. Right? And treat that like that's as important as the National Film Registry. And what we realized is there are a lot of covers, and we get real fucking punchy by the end. So you can find that too.
How many years can there be? How many years has it been going?
Guys, there are. So it starts in like 1984, 84.
That's even more recent than I would have thought.
Oh, and it's
there were no sexy men before 1984. I can confirm that.
Start on Mel Gibson. That's the first one. No, the one I recommend is every single one of you, whenever you can, please Google Nick Nolte Sexiest Man Alive. It is one of the greatest magazine covers of all time.
If it's not the mugshot,
it's somehow worse. Because at least the mugshot he seemed prepared for. This is like just him in a sweater in his backyard. It's really weird. Anyway, you're missing out. We talked about the National Film Registry. We just wrapped season 3. You can hear us talk about things like Lawrence of Arabia. We did The Blood of Jesus, Mary Pickford's Poor Little Rich Girl. We've got a wide range of stuff that we talk about. I think it's a lot of fun. Our final episode was Sherlock Jr., the Buster Keaton film, and then we do a little finale where we give out awards.
Oh, masterpiece! I can't wait to hear that episode.
It was an absolute delight to do because at the end of each season, we have our producer Kyle as our kind of guest, because Kyle is not nearly kind of the obsessive cinephile that Tom and I are, which is fun because we get to see these movies through kind of fresh eyes. Instead of having somebody who's like, I know every detail of Buster Keaton's life, we get to have somebody who's just like, I've never heard of this film or this person. What is this movie? And to get to have him watch it fresh for the first time is a lot of fun. So I hope folks check that out. I don't know, follow me on Twitter for more. Check out our YouTube. We've got stuff going up there. We're doing some travel stuff. I'm just rambling. I'm so tired.
No, well, you want me to cut you off? Okay, stop, Mike. Stop. We've heard enough, please.
Can we at least bring back the Crypt Keeper briefly? I delighted in him.
I don't know who that is. I think you're talking about the Scaretaker, who is a intellectually distinct.
Why do people keep comparing the two? I don't understand.
They're nothing alike. They're not similar.
You're right. Okay, I'm sorry. The Scaretaker, who is completely different than the Crypt Keeper. I would like to introduce him to my completely different from any copyrighted characters, Alien Smalf from Belmac, another 80s TV icon. Could that work? Make that swing.
You could try it. Mm-hmm. I'm not allowed to bring him into this studio.
Really?
He has to stay in the court.
I eat cats.
Except when it's convenient to me. Now, Mike, we always ask for recommendations from our guests for movies that you think people should see. Since it's Hell on Reels, we're asking for a spooky recommendation or heckamendations. So what have you got for us?
Well, I was thinking about that, and this is spooky in that it's deeply disturbing. But it's not a horror movie, though it does star a horror movie icon.
One rule.
It stars Claude Rains.
Okay.
At one point, and it is a deeply upsetting movie. And it is kind of a horror movie, except there's no monsters or anything. It's just people being bad. The other connective tissue that I see here is we're talking about Tom Cruise, a guy who everybody thinks of as a movie star so much that they ignore his sometimes shitty politics. And this movie stars a guy whose politics were so famously shitty that everybody forgets that he was ever a movie star. I'm talking about Ronald Reagan. I'm talking about old Ronnie Reagan. The movie I'm talking about is King's Row. I guarantee you didn't think that a movie in 1942 could be as unhinged and disturbing as a David Lynch or Takashi Miike movie. And in much the same way that something like Audition is like, it is a horror movie, but it's also like, well, there's nothing supernatural. It's just people getting cut up. Kings Row, a film from 1942, the same year as Pride of the Yankees and Mrs. Miniver, is a movie that features child abuse. It features suicide. It features forced, unnecessary amputations. Spoilers for an old movie. Reagan gets his legs chopped off by a doctor who thinks he's too promiscuous and has to yell with a blood-curdling scream, "Where's the rest of me?" It is a movie that was kind of lost to time because it was just seen as so disturbing in its day. And it is a haunting look at kind of suburban America and like polite society. It also comes out the same year as Magnificent Ambersons and kind of provides a fascinating contrast because whereas Ambersons has a very gothic horror vibe to it, despite being a drama, this movie is all about kind of poking holes in polite society and trying to dance around every topic from gay relationships to incest to, forced lobotomization or euthanization or anything like that. So it's a fascinating, upsetting film that also stars a future president.
Ah, yes. Well, it sounds like a lot of fun. Ryan, have you seen this?
I have heard of it, have not seen it, but now I want to.
See. Yeah, I'm going to put it on my list, absolutely. You had me at Ronald Reagan get his legs cut off, absolutely.
Where's the rest of me? Where's the rest of me?
Big Ben, what is your recommendation?
I'm going to go obvious today, folks, but for good reason, because it gives me a chance to plug an upcoming appearance on Ryan's other podcast, One Track Mind, where he and I discuss the commentaries of 1999's The Mummy. And despite the reviews listed earlier, I loved The Mummy when it came out. I still love it, from its charismatic leads to Rachel Weisz, to the gorgeous lighting to Rachel Weisz, to its flawless combination of horror, comedy, and adventure to Rachel Weisz, to its amazing sets, Rachel Weisz, and its melodic soundtrack, and of course, Rachel Weisz. There's still so much to love about this film. I want more films that make me feel like this one does. There's not a frame of the film that I don't recognize, and yet I'll still gladly rewatch it. Not a single character feels wasted or out of place. Sadly, the CGI doesn't hold up at all. I knew that it wouldn't even at the time. And it's a shame because they didn't attempt to do the mummy effects or the scarab beetles more practically, but it's not enough to kill it because the amazing sets certainly make up for it. And this film remains a warm comfort blanket for me to snuggle up in. And also, One Track Mind, check it out. Ryan does good work. Rachel Weisz.
Rachel Weisz.
How did I know you were going to go there? How did I know? Because it's a joke
every time we talk about her.
Every time.
I know. And we love it. Good recommendation. I did know you were going to go with that one, which is why I went with this one. My recommendation this week is a film that I would hope would have been retroactively included in the Dark Universe had it happened. 2010's The Wolfman. Returning to his ancestral home in England, Benicio del Toro? Okay. Well, returning to his ancestral home in England, American actor Benicio del Toro is bit on the bottom by Sir Anthony Hopkins and subsequently begins transforming into a monster. Almost certainly destined for its own date in this very court in the near future, this film would fit appropriately enough into the dark universe we see in today's film. Plus, it features a great cast. In addition to the previously named, we get Hugo Weaving, Emily Blunt, and Geraldine Chaplin. Also, make sure you track down the superior unrated version on DVD as it restores the Max von Sydow cameo, which they take out in the theatrical. Now, I'll grant you, anytime this film relies on CG, it earns its reputation. It totally got sabotaged by whoever was pushing Rick Baker's practical makeup effects to the side. Despite the fact that the CG runs rampant, all of the stuff with Baker's makeup effects totally lands, and that's why it actually won an Oscar that year for Best Makeup. Now, if the Dark Universe had drilled down to this, threw out all the CGI, brought in practical artisans to make practical horror movie effects, I think that the Dark Universe could have taken off. But unfortunately, we'll never know what could be.
Hey, I'll clap for that.
Thank you. Schlenzo, what have you got?
Also, some ROJ trivia. The novelization of that movie was written by former guest Jonathan Mayberry. And now you know the rest of it.
It's a favorite movie of Frank Dietz. I know that. I actually was surprised he hadn't recommended it.
Fascinating. I love Frank Dietz. What a guy. So, would you guys believe that I only had an hour and 20 minutes before we started recording tonight? So I had to scour through my Scarecrow list on Tubi. And of the several that were under an hour and 20 minutes, I picked Scary Crows from 2017. Now, this movie is about witchcraft, living scary crows, and the power of friendship or something. You see, they call them scary crows because it takes place in Britain. It's like this small little hamlet on the beach, and they have an ancient legend of how French troops were going to invade, and they hung up a bunch of scarecrows with fake guns, and that scared the French away. But the twist was a witch brought them to life, and they actually killed the troops. Anywho, now it's modern day, and all these teeny boppers are running around trying to run a hair salon. It's quite complicated, really. You'll have to watch the movie to understand it fully. Needless to say, it turns out one of the teenagers is a witch, as she summons the scary crows, and they go about killing. You see, it's so easy to make living scarecrow movies.
Then do it.
Well, maybe I will. Because all you have to do
you didn't say good scarecrow
is
movies.
follow. If there is a good scarecrow movie out there, someone please tell me. But the thing is, you have to follow the formula. You have folks wearing burlap sack bag masks, quick cuts with gore splatter, and like I said, this one just follows that formula. But it is British, so I think I've seen a living scarecrow movie from America, Canada, and now Britain. And my new goal in life is to see a living scarecrow movie from every movie-producing country in the world. Again, that's Scary Crows.
I'll let you know when I find the J-horror one.
I'm looking forward to it. Streaming on Tubi. Where else?
There probably will not be a Japanese one because the crows are allowed to do whatever they want. Very polite there.
Oh, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Ryan, send us on home.
Stop me if you've heard this before.
Okay.
Young lovers caught in a rainstorm seek refuge in a creepy old manor, and once there are thrust into a wacky adventure full of eccentric personalities. No, it isn't the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's my spooky recommendation this week, The Old Dark House from 1932. The film is not officially a Universal Monsters installment, but James Whale, the best director that the studio had on the payroll, retains the cycle's gothic atmospherics and striking expressionism, and is funny in the way that Whale's best pictures are, boosted by a supporting turn from Boris Karloff as the Old Dark House's hulking mute manservant that is as creepy and unsettling as any of Karloff the Uncanny's best performances. It's astonishing that in the space of 5 years, Whale made Frankenstein, this, The Invisible Man, and Bride of Frankenstein. All movies I could easily recommend if I haven't already. What a run! The Old Dark House is currently streaming on Canopy. Support your local library.
That's a good one. Karloff's great in that one. I have never seen Karloff bad in a movie.
Karloff's great in everything.
Yeah, never seen it.
I was gonna say, is he great in everything?
Yeah, pretty much.
Not if you ask
really.
Not if you ask Bela Lugosi and Ed Wood, because he seems to have some issues with Karloff, if I remember correctly.
Calls him a cocksucker.
Yeah, he wasn't fit to smell my shit.
I know. And we should stop using that as an insult. It's something we should encourage. With that, we are all out of time and all out of show, but we want to thank our guest, Mike Natale, for joining us. So thank you.
I'm going to call the Italian Defamation League about this pronunciation.
Oh, they're still around?
I don't know. What are they? I would have
tell them about our show. Please.
I would have landed that better if I was fully conscious. But unfortunately,
you would.
Unfortunately, to bring up the guy I mentioned in my recommendation, I feel I performed tonight like Reagan in his first debate against Mondale. We're halfway through. I was just like, "What did he say?" I'm so sorry.
Someone get Dennis Miller here to explain that joke to me.
What's going on?
We hope to have you back again, Mike, and we hope everyone else will join us again as well, as the Reels of Justice, Hell on Reels, keeps burning.
Count it.
Karloff!
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.